Blake Morrison worked hard on his small farm in Idaho, barely making ends meet after 3 years of poor harvests. When severe floods hit the region, he spotted a family trapped in rising waters near his property. Without hesitation, he drove his only working tractor through dangerous currents to reach them. The rescue took hours in the storm, damaging his tractor, his sole source of income for the upcoming harvest season. 3 days later, a black car pulled up to his muddy farmhouse. The man stepping out would change everything Blake knew about kindness and fate. Hi everyone, welcome to Mystic Tales. Today I'm excited to share a new story with you. Blake Morrison sat at his kitchen table, reviewing his farm's financial records. The morning sun lit up his weathered face as he sighed at the numbers. 3 bad harvests had left him struggling to keep his 40-acre Idaho farm running. Just need to make it through one more season, Blake said to himself, sipping his black coffee. The radio crackled with weather warnings about heavy rain and potential flooding in their county. Blake walked to his window and looked at the dark clouds gathering. His wheat fields needed rain, but not like this. The forecast worried him. He had already lost too much crop to bad weather over the past years. The rain started that afternoon. It fell harder than anything Blake had seen in his 15 years of farming. By evening, the local creek had swelled dangerously. Blake's lower fields were underwater, but his house sat safely on higher ground. The phone lines went dead around midnight. Blake kept his battery-powered radio on, listening to emergency broadcasts. The rain didn't stop. Water levels rose higher than any previous flood. At dawn, Blake heard something over the storm. He grabbed his raincoat and went outside. The sound came again, clearer this time. Someone was calling for help. Blake squinted through the rain. Down by the flooded road, he saw a minivan partially submerged in the rising water. A family was trapped inside, water reaching their windows. "Hold on!" Blake shouted. He knew his old John Deere was their only chance. The tractor was his most valuable possession, essential for the upcoming harvest. Blake started the tractor. The water was rising fast. He could see 2 adults and 3 children in the van, their faces pressed against the windows, scared but hopeful. The flood waters were deep and swift. Blake carefully drove his tractor toward them. The current pushed against his large wheels. He had to take it slow to avoid getting stuck himself. "Stay calm," Blake called out. "I'm coming to get you." The water reached the van's hood now. Blake positioned his tractor carefully. The father helped his wife and children climb from their van onto the tractor's platform. They were soaked and shivering. "Thank you," the mother said, holding her youngest child close. "We tried to evacuate, but the road disappeared under the water. Getting back was harder." The current had grown stronger. Blake's tractor struggled against it. The engine made concerning sounds as water splashed into places it shouldn't go. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they reached Blake's house. The family huddled in his living room, wrapped in every blanket he owned. "I'm Sarah Marshall," the mother said. "This is my husband, Michael, and our children, Emma, Lucas, and Amy. We can't thank you enough." Blake brought them hot coffee and soup. Anyone would have done the same, he said, though he worried about his tractor. The engine had sounded terrible by the end of the rescue. The storm continued through the day. The Marshall family stayed until the roads cleared. Blake learned they were heading to Boise when the flood caught them. They exchanged phone numbers before they left, promising to keep in touch. That night, Blake checked his tractor. The engine was damaged from the floodwater. Repairs would cost thousands, money he didn't have. But looking at the thank you note Sarah had written, with her children's drawings attached, he knew he'd made the right choice. 3 days after the rescue, Blake called several mechanics about his tractor. Each estimate hit him harder than the last. The flood damage was severe. "Looking at $8,000 minimum," the last mechanic said. "The electrical system is shot, and there's water damage in the engine." Blake sat on his porch, watching the sunset over his wet fields. Without a working tractor, he couldn't prepare for planting season. His savings wouldn't cover the repairs. A black SUV drove up his muddy driveway. A man in a business suit stepped out, looking oddly familiar. It was Michael, but dressed very differently from the day of the rescue. "Blake, I hoped you'd be home," Michael said, walking up to the porch. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Blake offered him a chair. Michael looked at the broken tractor in the yard. "That's the tractor you used to save us, right? How bad is the damage?" Michael asked. "Pretty bad. Water got into everything," Blake said. "But I'll figure something out." Michael nodded slowly. "Blake, I need to tell you something. I'm the regional director of Marshall Family Markets. We own 30 grocery stores across Idaho and Oregon." Blake remembered seeing their stores in Boise. They were known for working with local farmers. "We've been looking to partner with more local wheat farmers," Michael said. "Would you be interested in a contract? We need reliable suppliers for our in-store bakeries." Blake straightened in his chair. "I'd be interested, but with my tractor damaged, I can't guarantee this season's crop." Michael pulled out some papers from his briefcase. "We typically offer advance payments to our contracted farmers. It helps them prepare for the growing season." The contract was fair, better than most. The advance payment would cover the tractor repairs, with some left over for seeds and fertilizer. "This isn't charity, Blake," Michael said, noticing his hesitation. "We've checked your farm's history. Before the recent bad years, your wheat quality was among the best in the county." Blake read through the contract carefully. The prices were good, and the terms were clear. "My wife and I discussed this," Michael continued. "You risked your only working equipment to save our family. But this contract, it's purely business. We need good farmers, and you need reliable buyers." Blake thought about his options. This could be the break he needed, earned through years of hard work and one moment of kindness. "I appreciate the opportunity," Blake said. "I'll need my lawyer to review it, but I'm interested." Michael smiled. "Take your time. We'll need the first delivery in 8 months. That should give you plenty of time to repair your tractor and prepare for planting." They shook hands, and Michael left Blake with the contract. That evening, Blake called his lawyer and scheduled a meeting. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful about his farm's future. 2 weeks after signing the contract, Blake's tractor was fixed and running better than ever. The advance payment had covered the repairs, and he'd already ordered high-quality wheat seeds for the season. Blake's neighbor Tom stopped by one morning. "Heard you got a contract with Marshall Markets. That's a big deal around here." "It still feels unreal," Blake said, checking his newly repaired tractor. "But the timing couldn't be better." Tom nodded. "Their reputation with farmers is solid. My cousin supplies their Boise stores with corn, says they always pay on time." Blake spent the next few weeks preparing his fields. The flood damage wasn't as bad as he feared. The soil had actually improved in some areas from the mineral-rich floodwaters. Sarah Marshall called one afternoon while Blake was working. "We're opening a new store in Twin Falls," she said. "Would you like to meet some of our other farmers at the opening?" At the store opening, Blake met 5 other local farmers who supplied Marshall Markets. Each had similar stories about fair prices and reliable payments. "The Marshalls believe in supporting local farms," said Dave, a potato farmer from the next county. "They've helped many of us stay in business during tough times." Michael introduced Blake to their purchasing team. They discussed delivery schedules and quality standards. Everything was practical and straightforward. "We're expanding our bakery section," the head purchaser said. "If your wheat quality is good, we might need more than initially planned." Back at his farm, Blake worked harder than ever. He checked his wheat fields daily, monitoring their growth. The weather that season cooperated, with just the right amount of rain and sun. His first delivery to Marshall Markets was due in early September. Blake carefully tested his wheat's quality before harvesting. The results were better than he'd hoped. "Your wheat samples tested extremely well," Michael said during their monthly check-in call. "Our bakers are very pleased." The first payment arrived exactly when promised. Blake used it to pay off some old debts and invest in better equipment for next season. Other farmers in the area started asking Blake about his contract. "The Marshalls are fair people," he told them. "They understand farming isn't just business, it's a way of life." One evening, Blake received photos from Sarah. Their children had baked bread using flour from his wheat. "The kids wanted you to see what your hard work created," she wrote. Blake pinned the pictures on his kitchen wall. They reminded him how one act of kindness had led to this partnership, built on mutual respect and trust. As winter approached, Blake's success with Marshall Markets brought new opportunities. Other local farmers asked him to share his farming techniques. "Your wheat quality is exceptional," Michael said during a farm visit. "Would you consider mentoring some of our newer suppliers?" Blake agreed. He remembered his own early struggles and wanted to help others succeed. 3 new farmers came to learn about his soil management and crop rotation methods. "I almost gave up farming last year," said Robert, one of the new suppliers. "The Marshall contract saved my family farm." Blake showed them his detailed records of rainfall, soil tests, and fertilizer use. These small details had helped him maintain consistent quality throughout the season. Sarah invited Blake to speak at a local farming conference. He shared his experience about working with family-owned grocery chains versus large corporations. "The difference is, they understand farming," Blake told the audience. "They work with us through good and bad seasons." During the conference, Blake learned Marshall Markets was planning to add more local products. They wanted to expand their farm-to-table program in their bakery section. "We need more farmers like you," Michael said after the conference. "People who care about quality and take pride in their work." Blake's second wheat harvest for Marshall Markets was even better than the first. The stable income helped him invest in soil improvements and better storage facilities. One morning, Tom visited again. "Remember when you worried about losing the farm? Look at you now, teaching others." Blake walked his fields, remembering the flood that changed everything. His farm had become a model for sustainable family farming in the region. The Marshall children visited during harvest time. They wanted to see how wheat was grown and harvested. Blake showed them how to check wheat kernels for quality. "My mom says your wheat makes the best bread," Emma, the oldest Marshall child, said while examining a wheat stalk. Blake received calls from other grocery chains, but he stayed loyal to Marshall Markets. Their partnership was built on more than just business. "We're planning to feature your story in our monthly newsletter," Sarah told him, "to show how local partnerships build stronger communities." The article would be simple and honest, focusing on sustainable farming and community support, just like the partnership that started with a rescue during a flood. 1 year after the flood, Blake hosted a small gathering at his farm. The Marshall family, local farmers, and community members came to celebrate the successful partnership. "When I drove my tractor into those floodwaters, I never imagined it would lead to this," Blake said to the group. "I was just helping because it was right." Michael stood up to speak. "A year ago, Blake risked his livelihood to save my family. Today, he's helped transform how we work with local farmers." The gathering was simple, held in Blake's renovated barn. Sarah and other farmers' wives brought homemade bread made from his wheat. Children played in the yard while adults discussed farming and community. "Your wheat supply helped us open 2 more bakery sections," Michael said. "Our customers love knowing their bread comes from local farms." Blake showed everyone his new grain storage system, bought with the profits from his Marshall Markets contract. It helped him maintain better quality control year-round. "Next season, we're increasing our local wheat orders by 30%, Michael announced. "Blake will help us coordinate with other farmers to meet the demand." Tom approached Blake during the celebration. "Remember when you worried about losing everything? Now you're helping others keep their farms." Blake walked to his tractor, the same one from the flood. He'd kept it well maintained, a reminder of where this journey began. "We're starting a farmer training program," Sarah told the group. "Blake will help teach sustainable farming practices to new suppliers." The Marshall children had drawn pictures of Blake's farm, showing the wheat fields and his tractor. He hung them in his office, alongside the first thank you note. As the sun set, guests began to leave. The Marshall family stayed behind to help clean up. It felt natural, like family helping family. "Sometimes the best business partnerships start with simple kindness," Michael said as they finished cleaning. Blake looked over his fields in the evening light. His farm had become more than just a business. It was proof that one act of helping others could grow into something bigger. "Thank you for trusting me with your wheat supply," Blake said to Michael and Sarah. "Thank you for trusting us with your farm's future," Sarah replied. As the Marshalls drove away, Blake stood on his porch. His farm was thriving, but more importantly, he'd helped build something meaningful in his community. The same radio that had warned of floods a year ago now sat in his kitchen, playing quietly. Blake smiled, knowing sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest choices to help others. Loved this story? Tap that like button and subscribe to Mystic Tales for more. Let us know how this story made you feel with a single word in the comments.